I worked with the academic advisors in departments and in our academic advisement center. And what we looked at were what were some signs that we saw when we might think we have an at-risk. What are some things we would do? We talked about more communication. We said if we see that we have a student that is having a problem, then maybe you can call that student in or you can ask that student, um, are there different, programs that you need to be involved in? Know the resources that are available, what you can refer students to. Um, they said really just like intrusive advisement, just making sure that they are in contact with that student and they have information to give out to the students. If they need to go to, and we talked mostly about those that are undeclared majors. So, maybe send them to career services, have them do shadowing, maybe take some courses that they might have likes for. So, really, it was the intrusive advisement and communications. They said another thing that they think would be good. Not sure what the overall faculty would think about this. Is instead of doing the midterm grades, do quarterly grades. A lot of our freshmen that are coming in are, you know, really, really. I don't want to say that they don't truly understand what it is to, you know, be failing a class. They think that they go all the way through until midterms and thinking that they're getting an A in a class, and somehow when they get that midterm grade and have an F, not understand what happened. And so if we had quarterly grades, then it would be easier for them to be realistic with um, what they're going to get. They also talked about an early alert system. Yolanda spoke when she was at Temple. There was a system that they have, and maybe it can go through Banner, where every time they met with someone, they documented that information. They put it in the system, and the student would also get that email that says, you saw Yolanda on January 5th. And if Yolanda made a referral and said, you need to go to career services or you need to go to the math tutor, once that math tutor, then they put that documentation in there. And so then that student will, really be, aware of all of the help that they've tried to get, and then maybe it'll be a little bit easier for them. So pretty much the early alert system, the quarterly reports, and then just intrusive advisement.
I worked with a faculty group. We spent most of our time talking about what faculty are already doing to identify at-risk students. And not surprisingly, the methods are basically two. They look at attendance and they look at performance. And so attendance takes the form of actually tracking attendance, sometimes using it to figure grades, not allowing students to make up work when they don't come to class, which then is sort of an incentive for them to get there. Some folks actually take attendance, identify students to their chairs if they have excessive absences, and the chairs help follow up. That can be a big help as well. In terms of the performance, though, sometimes they're just very basic methods too. One instructor reported, for instance, that when a student gets an especially low grade on a quiz or a test, the student gets a big red number circled on the exam, and that's the clue to the instructor that this student has to follow up with him. And so the student knows, if I perform poorly, I have to go see my teacher. And if the student doesn't show up, the teacher follows up with the student until he or she does. But this particular instructor also reported on a technique that I think is useful. It's simply being aware of students who have questions, who obviously have questions during class time but aren't asking them, and drawing them out so that they get the information they need to understand the assignment and move on and so forth. We didn't have a lot of time to talk about the at-risk, the early warning system, but there did seem to be some support for something that would be simple, attached to Banner or PAWS, a system that we're already using so that instructors could indicate when students have excessive absences. This information would then go to somebody else who would follow up, and it could be a combination of somebody's. It could be the advisor, it could be residence hall staff, it could be somebody in the Student Success Center, but there are all kinds of possibilities there.
Thank you, Mary. We want to thank you all for coming. We want to make sure we collect your green cards. As a wrap-up, I want to say this is the beginning of the discussion. It's not the end, and we've certainly not found the perfect solution to getting to that 85% retention rate by 2013. But I want to encourage all of you to communicate with us if you have good ideas. We are starting a new newsletter called Retention Matters. We think it's kind of funny. And some of the data and information that we have shared with you today will be in the first issue of the newsletter. We have a stack of them outside, so as we're wrapping up and finishing, we'd like you to pick up a copy. We'll be circulating those campus-wide in the next few days, but you get the early edition. But you will be hearing more from CORE about some of these initiatives, and we will be asking for your help in participating in whatever early alert system we put together. We may be asking more information in terms of, okay, what are you really willing to do? Maybe doing a short survey. And I know that you will be asked, what can we do locally in your department, in your unit, in your particular office? And I would just encourage everybody to realize that every encounter you have with the student is part of the retention process. Every conversation, every email, every encounter in the hallway, every day in class is part of our retention efforts. So it doesn't have to be a big, huge, expensive thing. It may be those little touches. We already know, we have the data that shows that personal experience is what makes our alums happy. That's why they come here. That's why they're satisfied alums. That's what our seniors said on the National Survey of Student Engagement. Okay? So we know we've got that going for us. We may need to just increase that a little bit and keep looking for ways to make a smooth transition from matriculation to graduation and try not to throw up any obstacles unwarranted in a student's path. And so CORE will be looking at all of those kinds of things. Every issue of the newsletter is going to have a spotlight on, and a spotlight on a program that's doing something related to retention. And so if you have ideas for that, let one of us know, because we would love to spotlight your program. There's also a CORE Corner where we can keep you up to date on what we're doing and ask for your feedback. Okay? And the first newsletter has an article directed specifically at the faculty. What can you do in your classroom, in your office, to aid in students' retention and ultimately their success here? Okay. Any last words? Anyone? Blair? Okay. Thank you all for coming.
We're going to take your green cards, everything we gathered up here. The committee's going to be re-looking at that. We're going to push it out to the website. But we have all your emails, so you might get a question from us about what you meant or asking us to help, so be on the lookout for that as well.
Because we know who you are. Thank you.